Fine, I'll handle it. The words echoed through the Galactic Council chamber like a shock wave. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy sat in stunned silence, some of their many eyes blinking in sync, others twitching their mandibles in shock. The council had gathered to discuss the human problem, an enigma that had puzzled and, to be blunt, terrified the galaxy for years. Humans were odd. They didn't possess the brute strength of the Truvik, nor the advanced weaponry of the Zarathians. Their ships were decent, but by no means cutting edge. And yet somehow these strange beings from a little blue planet continued to survive, even thrive in situations that no other species could. The Council had decided to address the escalation on the human frontier, a series of raids and skirmishes that had gone unresolved. For the past few months, the combined forces of the Dralax, Zarathians, and Truvik empires had been poking, testing, and probing at human outposts, expecting an eventual retreat, some surrender, or at the very least, a negotiation. But humans had never surrendered. A tall, thin alien with a gelatinous head who called himself Envoy Frix, representative of the Unified Alliance, broke the silence. "Captain Lyons," he hissed, his voice a thin whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. "Your species has repeatedly refused assistance, diplomacy, or compliance with Galactic Council protocols. Our suggestion, a diplomatic withdrawal." Captain Elias Lyons, standing alone and unarmed in the center of the room, chuckled. The sound was unsettling, a human laugh, something rarely heard by any member of the council. He clasped his hands behind his back, his stance relaxed yet steady. "Listen, you can call it what you want," Lyons said, his voice steady, "but where I'm from, when someone doesn't respect our borders, we don't talk. We don't call for help. We handle it. So I'll make this real simple. We're done negotiating. You think we're weak? Fine. I'll show you what weak really looks like." Before anyone could respond, Lyons turned on his heel and walked out of the council chamber, leaving a stunned silence behind him. The humans had refused any further communication with the council, and a simple message was transmitted back to their home systems: stand down or prepare for consequences. It was, of course, ignored. In the following weeks, the galaxy braced for what they assumed would be a small conflict, easily quashed by the combined forces of the most advanced empires in existence. After all, the humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and strategically vulnerable. But what began as a confident foray into human territory quickly turned into a nightmare. It started small. Dralax scout ships patrolling the outer rings of human territory disappeared. At first, the Dralax High Command dismissed it as minor sabotage, maybe an issue with communication relays. But then the missing ships began piling up, and every attempt to retrieve or even locate them was met with failure. Then came the Zarathians' turn. Their fleets, infamous for their precision and technological prowess, were shocked to find their weapon systems malfunctioning, as though invisible hands were tampering with their core functions. Ships that tried to engage were suddenly swallowed by enormous EMP blasts, rendering even the most advanced Zarathian destroyers powerless. The Truvik, usually dismissive of tactics and preferring brute strength, sent wave after wave of soldiers, confident that their numbers alone would overpower the human forces. But for every Truvik platoon that landed, there seemed to be a human sniper. Or worse, a human commando lying in wait, emerging from the shadows like ghosts. The humans struck with an unpredictable mix of technology and pure audacity. They adapted their tactics faster than any AI could calculate, leaving the aliens scrambling, forever one step behind. Where the Zarathians used calculated formations, humans deployed guerrilla warfare and ambushes in places no one thought possible. When the Dralax attempted to blockade the human systems, humans found weak points in their lines and struck with surgical precision, disabling command ships and supply lines. Commander Rockvac, a Truvik veteran of 100 battles, paced furiously in his command tent, slamming his armored fist against a holographic map. "How are they doing this?" he growled, his voice reverberating. The Truvik officers around him exchanged uneasy glances, unused to seeing their leader display anything other than confidence. They had marched into battle with the intent of crushing the humans swiftly, an invasion that should have taken a matter of weeks. "We have reports that they're Exploiting psychological warfare, sir, a younger officer muttered, avoiding eye contact. They set traps. We find our men shaken. We don't know what they're seeing, Rockvac snarled. They're just humans. We have 3 times their firepower, and yet they keep tearing through our lines. Explain that to me. Silence filled the room. No one could explain it. No one understood why the humans, seemingly on the brink of exhaustion, kept coming, each move more unpredictable and relentless than the last. What little data they had suggested that humans thrived under conditions that would break other species. Limited resources, hostile terrain, a clear disadvantage in numbers and technology, none of it seemed to matter to them. The situation grew more desperate. The Galactic Council, watching from afar, scrambled to make sense of the reports pouring in. Human assault squads are adapting to our tactics faster than anticipated, a Zarathian commander reported in frustration, his compound eyes flicking in agitation as he faced the council. Envoy Fricks, ever the pragmatist, rubbed his gelatinous head with a translucent appendage. Then adjust your tactics. The Zarathian nearly hissed in response. That's the problem. They don't fight like us. Their methods are unpredictable, erratic, and disturbingly effective. Our AIs cannot predict their next moves. Envoy Fricks sighed, trying to make sense of the situation. The council members exchanged anxious glances. The plan had been simple. Engage the humans, push them back, and re-establish boundaries. But the humans had ignored every diplomatic attempt, avoided every ambush, and now, inexplicably, were closing in on core territories. Meanwhile, across the human front lines, word spread like wildfire. It wasn't just a battle, it was a declaration, a reminder. Captain Lyon's words had taken on a life of their own, repeated in hushed whispers and over encrypted comms. Fine, I'll handle it. It had become more than a response. It was a mantra, a rallying cry. For the humans, this wasn't just about holding ground. It was a matter of pride. And behind the scenes, strategists on Earth watched with a quiet satisfaction, orchestrating countermeasures that left the alien forces in disarray. On the ground, every human soldier knew that there was no turning back. They fought like men possessed, their focus sharpened by the knowledge that the entire galaxy was watching. The Galactic Council scrambled to regain control, deploying more fleets and even calling for additional mercenaries, the kind of forces they had never relied upon before. But with every new fleet sent to the front lines, the reports only grew more disturbing. Humans weren't merely fighting, they were adapting in real time, shifting tactics as effortlessly as a breeze changes direction. Counselor Duraksh, a seasoned strategist and high-ranking Dralax official, sat with his face tense in the war room. The once mighty holographic map of human territories now riddled with disturbing red indicators of lost battles. We're dealing with a menace, he muttered, his voice barely a whisper, but still carrying the weight of his shock. They aren't retreating, they're advancing. Across the table, Zarathian Admiral Glix's multifaceted eyes flickered in agitation. Their strength is not in numbers, nor even in technology. Their strength is in unpredictability. It defies everything our models predict. The Dralax officer cleared his throat nervously. Sir, their ground forces show no signs of exhaustion. We've detected increased efficiency. They don't just shoot, they analyze. They change strategies mid-battle as if... He paused, unwilling to finish the thought. As if they're enjoying it, Glix finished, his voice dark with a growing realization. Every species we've fought has a limit, a threshold beyond which they falter. But with humans, there seems to be a different appetite. It's as though war itself is something they can manipulate to their advantage. Unbeknownst to the Council, humanity's response was running deeper than mere tactics. Earth's leaders had deployed some of the finest minds from military schools, experimental psychologists, and behavioral analysts, working together to devise not just plans, but ideas that could exploit the aliens' weaknesses in ways traditional battlefronts never could. Teams had even studied recordings of alien communications and psychology, noting patterns, habits, and instincts that could be used against them. The humans on the ground were carrying out a type of warfare the galaxy had never seen. It was psychological, relentless, and, above all, unpredictable. Alien commanders found their supply lines severed in unexpected places, Ambushes were set up where none had ever anticipated a threat, and any attempt to retaliate was swiftly countered by a different strategy. The enemy's lines were being stretched, pulled into corners, and set into traps they hadn't seen coming. Out in the field, Captain Lyons led a small recon squad deep within Truvik territory, moving silently under cover of night. They were a mere dozen, barely a fraction of the Truvik garrison stationed nearby. Yet they had the advantage of knowing exactly where their enemies' blind spots lay, and they exploited them ruthlessly. Over a shared comm, his team was briefed, their voices steady, unshaken. "On my mark," Lyons whispered, signaling the two soldiers flanking him. They moved with precision, cutting through the Truvik encampment like shadows, disabling sentries and planting devices that would jam communications once the skirmish began. "Captain," one of his men spoke up in the secure comm, "we're reading additional Dralax units approaching. They're coordinating with the Truvik forces, might be setting up a crossfire strategy." Lyons grinned. "Perfect. Let them think they have us pinned. They're about to learn why humans play chess, not checkers." The trap was set. Within minutes, the alien forces poured into the clearing, unaware of the booby traps lying just beyond their sight. Explosives detonated, communications failed, and in the ensuing chaos, Lyons and his team took out the bewildered troops one by one, leaving them scattered and disoriented. The aftermath was pure devastation. Reports flowed into the council, each one worse than the last. The councilors reviewed hollow footage of Truvik commanders sprinting into their own ambushes, watching Zarathian fighters inexplicably shot down after entering what they assumed was secure human territory. The humans weren't retreating. They were toying with their attackers, defying all conventional battle strategies. Back at the Galactic Council headquarters, the remaining leaders gathered once again, each species represented by their finest minds. Envoy Frix was there, his gelatinous form vibrating with frustration. Councillor Duraksh glanced over, his usually stoic face marked with a rare expression of unease. What are they doing?" Frix finally asked, his voice wavering. "Are they playing with us?" "Playing," Duraksh scoffed. "Perhaps to them, this is a game, but it's something far worse for us. We're facing extinction if we can't stop them. They're dismantling us, piece by piece." Just then, a grim figure stepped forward. Councillor Zalkrak, one of the few councillors with experience in ground combat, spoke up, his voice a rumble. "Humans don't conquer with sheer numbers. They conquer with ideas, with relentless, maddening creativity that forces us to react instead of attack. This isn't war as we know it. This is..." He struggled to find a word, some concept that fit, and finally settled with a shudder. "An invasion of the mind." A thick silence filled the council chambers as the weight of his words sunk in. The realization that humans were not fighting in traditional ways. They were breaking their enemies' minds as much as their bodies, and they showed no signs of stopping. Meanwhile, on the front lines, the human soldiers received new orders. Now that their forces had penetrated alien strongholds, Earth's military command issued a directive that sent ripples through the ranks. No retreat, no surrender. Only complete tactical disruption. They were to scatter the alien forces, disrupt their supply chains, and move on, leaving only confusion and chaos behind. The objective was no longer about merely defending human space. It was about making every alien incursion into human territory a punishment so severe that the galaxy itself would rethink any thoughts of future conflict. Every encounter became a scene of torment for the alien forces. Humans used their unpredictability as a weapon, never attacking the same way twice, never letting the enemy feel secure for more than a few hours. An alien camp might hear the sound of engines 1 minute, feel the ground tremble as if tanks were approaching, and then silence, a ghostly quiet that drove them mad with anticipation. Across the many war-torn planets, the humans began using psychological warfare techniques that sent alien soldiers into a spiral of dread. Strange lights flickered across the dark plains at night. Loud speakers blared confusing orders in broken alien languages, and dummy soldiers, decoys that looked convincingly real in the dark, were left in strategic locations, drawing enemy fire and causing infighting among the ranks. No one knew what was real or imagined. The humans had the aliens trapped in their own fears, and morale broke faster than the humans anticipated. Entire battalions surrendered without a fight, simply hoping to be spared from whatever the humans had planned next. Word of these surrenders spread fast. Aliens who once prided themselves on honor and valor began abandoning their posts, leaving weapons and equipment behind, fleeing in hopes of escaping the relentless human advance. The message was clear. Humans were not just defending their home. They were showing the galaxy why they were called a death world species, a term that, until now, had seemed nothing more than a curiosity. But for the Galactic Council, the horror was just beginning. Councillor Durax, desperate for options, suggested a treaty once more, proposing a negotiated peace with terms favoring the humans. But the suggestion was met with silence. Envoy Frix's gelatinous form quivered. "If we surrender now," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "what hope is left for the galaxy? They'll see it as weakness. They'll know we're not united. They'll... The door to the council chamber slid open, and a young Dralax officer entered, trembling with barely concealed terror. He handed Councillor Durax a datapad with the latest battlefield report. The councillor read it in silence, his face a mixture of anger and deep, gut-wrenching dread. He glanced at Frix, then back at the report. His voice, when he finally spoke, was hollow. "They don't want our surrender, Frix. They don't even want our territory. They want something else." "What?" Frix asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Drox looked up, eyes haunted. "They want us to remember, to never forget what happens when we challenge a human, and they say, 'Fine, I'll handle it.'" In the depths of the Galactic Council Command, Councillor Drox and Envoy Frix sat in tense silence, reading the latest battlefield report. The war, once expected to end in a swift victory, had turned into a nightmare. Humanity's tactics were unlike anything they'd faced, unpredictable, relentless, and unnerving. Alien forces known for discipline and structure were disintegrating under the stress. Rumors of shadow ships and invisible commandos circulated, eroding their morale. Captain Lyons, the face of humanity's resolve, had become a symbol of the terror they now felt. His words still haunted the council members. "Fine, I'll handle it." He'd meant it too. The humans were advancing, and now even the galaxy's strongest empires were crumbling in their path. Alien commanders were unable to sleep, haunted by stories of ambushes and traps that left their soldiers scattered and broken. In a last attempt at control, Councillor Durax called for a meeting. The councillors reviewed footage of human strikes on core territories, each more devastating than the last. They had tried every countermeasure, every tactic they knew, and yet the humans adapted, changing their methods faster than any fleet could respond. Durax turned to Frix, his face taut with frustration and fear. "They're dismantling us piece by piece," he muttered, eyes fixed on the holomap showing yet another lost fleet. Envoy Frix trembled. "They're not just breaking our defenses. They're breaking us." As if on cue, a transmission flickered to life. Captain Lyons appeared, his face calm and resolute. In the quiet command room, his voice was a steel thread through the thick silence. "To the Galactic Council, we're done negotiating. Withdraw all forces from human space immediately, or face the consequences." He paused, his gaze intense. "This isn't a request. It's your last warning." The council members exchanged desperate looks. Councillor Zalkrok, known for his combat experience, broke the silence. "If we continue, they'll destroy us all. They don't fight for territory. They fight with purpose. This isn't just a war. It's their declaration." But as Lyons's ultimatum faded from the screen, a bitter debate began. Some councillors, too proud or too fearful of their own reputations, urged a final stand, arguing that the galaxy's might would ultimately overpower these relentless humans. Others, more shaken by what they'd seen, voted for retreat. The council fractured, each member forced to face the true scale of what they had unleashed. Within days, orders were sent to alien fleets, instructing them to pull back from human territory. The council had accepted defeat. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Council yielded to an opponent. Back on Earth, word of the retreat reached humanity. The victory was more than a triumph. It was a transformation. Humanity had proven itself not only capable of survival, but worthy of respect. They had forced the galaxy to acknowledge their strength and resilience. In every human city, a new sense of pride emerged. As humans fortified their borders, the message left behind was clear. Earth was no longer a world to be underestimated. Humanity had faced the galaxy and, through sheer determination, had shown it a truth that could not be ignored. They were not conquerors or invaders. They were survivors, and they would defend their own. For humans, this victory was a beginning, a promise to face whatever lay beyond the stars, with a spirit no other species could match.